For 9 years, and if you truly wanted to be precise, nearly 10. Counting those frustrating, uncompensated months I spent waiting for a bureaucratic grant cycle to renew. I poured my entire being into InnovateForward. We're a nonprofit tech incubator, a place that, on paper, pulsed with the promise of change. Our mission statements glowed with words like disruptive innovation and transformative impact, aiming to build cutting-edge solutions for social good. And I was the one who actually built them. My world was the quiet hum of servers. It's the intricate dance of algorithms unfolding on my screens, the meticulous architecture of data pipelines forming under my touch. While others were out schmoozing potential investors, networking at flashy industry events, or delivering impassioned, often hollow speeches, I was deep in the trenches. I wrestled with dense spreadsheets, untangled labyrinthine policy overlays, and pulled countless all-nighters fueled by lukewarm coffee and sheer determination. Meticulously crafting district proposals that would actually secure the funding we needed. I didn't seek the spotlight. I didn't crave the applause. My profound satisfaction came from knowing with absolute certainty that what I built worked, that my systems generated tangible outcomes, that a child in a struggling school district finally gained access to our digital learning platform. Not because of a glossy presentation, but because my precise budget, foresight, and infrastructure design kept that entire project afloat. Our quarterly review had just wrapped. Another one where my name, Alex, was discreetly tucked into a list of key contributors. No direct eye contact from leadership across the polished conference table. No personalized acknowledgement, just those polite, distant nods that always felt like an afterthought. I was accustomed to it. It was the predictable pattern of my existence within InnovateForward. But what I wasn't accustomed to, what truly hit me with the sudden, chilling force of a cold front, was the message that popped into my inbox a mere 5 minutes later. It was from Celeste, our head of strategy. The subject line was deceptively innocuous. Can you swing by my office for a quick sync? Celeste's office was always a masterclass in controlled chaos. Overly curated, every object perfectly placed, and perpetually scented with that cloying jasmine. A fragrance she probably believed conveyed an aura of calm, but to my senses it always screamed of underlying stress. I stepped in the thick corporate carpet, muffling my footsteps, and sat across from her immaculate desk, instinctively crossing my legs, as if adopting a composed posture could somehow lend me an air of importance or control. Celeste offered a smile. It was a tight managerial smile. A smile that spoke of pre-rehearsed words, a predetermined narrative, and an agenda she was about to execute. Alex, she began, her voice smooth, almost purring with a practiced warmth. I truly want to say how much we value everything you've done this quarter. Your budgetary foresight really helped keep the Genesis project from derailing. The board noticed. I noticed. That was the moment. The precise millisecond that disparate puzzle pieces clicked into place, forming an unwelcome picture. This wasn't genuine praise. This was the wind-up to the punch, the soft, deceptive music before the inevitable drop. She continued, her words polished to a dull sheen, meticulously crafted to sound appreciative, yet ultimately dismissive of my true value. And with the new head of innovation role opening up, she smoothly articulated, we've decided to move Blake into that position. Blake, 18 months in. 18 months. And in that time, he'd acquired precisely 0 experience with core system architecture, 0 understanding of our sprawling legacy platforms. He genuinely couldn't tell the difference between a secure API and a broken spreadsheet. But he had a calendar perpetually full of vibe alignment sessions and an undeniable gift for disruptive ideation. He knew how to talk the talk, how to make meaningless buzzwords sing a compelling tune. He was the kind of person who could sell ice to an Eskimo, even if he possessed absolutely no idea how to actually make the ice. I just nodded once. A slow, deliberate nod. Understood, I said, my voice betraying nothing. A carefully constructed wall. Celeste blinked, her expression briefly faltering. She probably expected a question, or perhaps a desperate protest. A desperate plea for reconsideration? I gave her neither. What could I possibly say that would penetrate that polished facade? That the innovative systems she was so enthusiastically praising, the very ones Blake was now inheriting, had been meticulously designed, painstakingly coded, and flawlessly implemented by me. That Blake still thought a VPN was some kind of new exotic coffee blend? Thanks for letting me know, I said, rising from the plush chair. I extended my hand and she took it, her grip surprisingly weak, almost hesitant. She offered some empty invitation to mentor Blake in the coming months. A thinly veiled attempt to offload her responsibilities onto me while giving him the credit. I shook her hand, her grip surprisingly weak, and left the office. I didn't have a single piece of paper in my hand, no personal effects to carry away, but in my mind, a plan was already forming. By the time I reached the familiar solitude of my own desk, that initial flare of indignation had settled into a profound, chilling sense of calculation. Blake got his new business cards by Monday morning. Director of Strategic Partnerships, the title they'd landed on for him. All lowercase logos and italicized fonts, straight out of a startup playbook designed for maximal cool factor. He passed them around like confetti at a launch party, floating from desk to desk in his chunky, fashionable heels and radiating curated excitement. A designer latte clutched in one hand and a copy of Digital Disruption for Dummies in the other. He greeted people as if he were hosting a casual Sunday brunch. Rather than attempting to lead a national funding strategy for a complex tech organization, it was a performance. And the entire office, it seemed, was his captive audience. That week, he unveiled his first grand initiative, something he grandiosely dubbed Culture Calibration Circles. The email invite stated it was mandatory optional, which in corporate speak meant everyone had to show up. So we all gathered, armed with our coffees and carefully neutral expressions, waiting for the inevitable absurdity to unfold. Blake opened with a slide deck titled The Heart of Impact, Redesigning Relationships in Purpose-Driven Spaces. Somewhere around the sixth slide, he actually compared donor engagement to vibrational alignment. That's when I mentally tuned out. My brain, meticulously wired for logic, for data, for tangible reality, simply couldn't process the abstract, meaningless nonsense. It was like trying to debug a program written in a language that didn't exist. By Wednesday, I started noticing it seep into the internal memos. Shifting phrases, my phrases. Words and concepts I'd painstakingly crafted, meticulously refined, in countless proposals and internal documents now reworded, filtered through Blake's glossy, jargon-laden tone. Decentralized budget engagement was his brilliant new term for the exact same. Distributed network architecture I designed last year to streamline our platform's funding requests. Field synergy nodes was his grandiose way of referring to the regional tech liaisons I personally trained. The very people I'd spent countless hours onboarding and supporting, building their capabilities from the ground up. He'd taken my robust, functional frameworks and merely papered them in neon jargon, making them sound trendy, flashy, but utterly hollow. I didn't speak up, not because I was scared, fear wasn't my primary motivator, but because I didn't need to. I still had the original drafts, every single one, time-stamped, versioned, tracked. My digital footprint within the company's servers was irrefutable, undeniable. I began a systematic process of sorting them, project by project, initiative by region, outcome by fiscal year, not with bitterness, not with malice, not with the heat of anger. I did it with the same quiet, unwavering thoroughness I'd always applied to my work, methodical, precise, anticipatory. The whispers in the break room grew louder. Less hushed, more anxious. The initial polite murmurs transformed into something tinged with genuine concern. A major donor, one I'd cultivated for years through meticulous impact reports and transparent communication, unexpectedly backed out of a crucial pilot program. An internal email detailing our new app integration somehow got sent twice, containing glaringly contradictory numbers. Then, one afternoon, one of our most brilliant regional consultants, a woman I'd personally brought into the team and championed, quietly approached me, almost conspiratorially. She asked, her voice low, if I was still overseeing the core API logic for the new platform rollout. I simply told her no. I watched as discomfort, thick and palpable like bad weather, settled into her face. She knew. They all knew deep down that something vital had been disconnected. At night, in the quiet solitude of my home, I reviewed old correspondence, attached detailed notes. I tagged key messages. I created a new, meticulously organized folder on my personal drive, separate from anything work-related, labeling it *** continuity assets. ***, this wasn't about revenge. This was about reference. Because if the day came when truth demanded structure, when facts needed an undeniable foundation, I wasn't going to rely on a faulty memory or unverified claims. By Friday, I had everything I needed, everything meticulously compiled. In one secure place, documents, frameworks, data trails. And one final sealed letter, resting quietly on my desk, but not yet delivered. 2 weeks passed. Each day felt like a quiet internal countdown. Blake settled deeper into his role, stacking initiatives like mismatched furniture, demonstrating more enthusiasm than actual understanding. Meetings, once collaborative, now ballooned into performative spectacles. All surface-level sparkle, and zero underlying structure. I attended exactly as often as protocol required, a silent observer in the back of the room. I offered nothing, absorbed everything. The sheer weight of what I knew, the mountain of documented truth, had grown dense. It was time. I sent a short, to-the-point message to Celeste that morning. Would appreciate a quick one-on-one this afternoon. Her assistant, ever efficient, replied promptly with a slot at 3:15 p.m. It suited me perfectly. I walked into her office carrying a slim manila envelope and an even slimmer dark navy folder. Celeste stood when I entered, a polite, customary gesture, and gestured toward the same plush chair where she'd offered me platitudes and delivered the disappointment. Just 2 weeks ago, I didn't sit. The act of standing conveyed a different kind of power. Thanks for making time, I said, my voice calm, steady, betraying no hint of the turmoil that had once churned within me. Of course, she replied, her polite smile unwavering, still oblivious to the seismic shift that was about to occur. I wanted to let you know I'll be stepping down. I placed the manila envelope gently, deliberately, on her immaculate desk. That's my formal resignation. Her brow lifted just slightly, a subtle but distinct crack in her carefully composed facade. See. The words were clipped, a touch of surprise in her tone. And attached, I continued, my gaze unwavering as I nodded toward the navy folder resting beneath the envelope, is a summary of concerns I believe the board should be aware of. Specifically, documented instances of misuse of designated development funds, significant inconsistencies in reporting metrics, and at least one verifiable instance of client data redirection without consent. Celeste didn't speak. Her eyes, usually so guarded and calculating, widened imperceptibly, a flicker of genuine shock crossing them. She slowly, almost ritualistically, picked up the manila envelope, opened it, and began to scan the top page. I watched her fingers pause over the meticulously listed line items. The audit trail notes I'd included, the flagged transactions cross-referenced with original agreements. My work, my undeniable, meticulous work, now laid bare. I stayed quiet, letting the weight of the documentation speak for itself. The silence in the room felt clean, pure, unburdened by pretense. "I'm giving 2 weeks," I said after a moment, breaking the stillness. My voice remained even deliberate. "But I imagine the timeline for my departure may shift depending on how this is handled internally." Her mouth opened as if she meant to argue, to deny, to deflect, but no words followed. I saw something flicker in her eyes then. Not fear, not quite, but the stark, dawning recognition of someone who had just realized a door had been opened, a door she couldn't possibly close. The game for her was over. "I won't be discussing the contents further," I added, my voice still calm, almost dismissive. "It's already been submitted through the appropriate compliance channel." I turned and left without waiting for her response, without a backward glance. As the door clicked shut behind me, I felt a profound, satisfying calm settle into my spine, something sharp but incredibly steady. Like momentum finally finding its true, unobstructed direction. My final 2 weeks at InnovateForward were, by all outward appearances, utterly unremarkable. By design, I showed up each day at precisely 8 a.m., logged in, answered only what absolutely needed answering, and delivered the reports I'd already half-written, just waiting for the final countdown. I kept everything clean, neutral, professionally detached. There were no dramatic exits, no conspicuously skipped meetings, no petty acts of defiance. I wasn't there to make noise. I was there to finish what I started. But behind that calm, powerful, quiet machine was running on pure intention. Every spare minute, every snatched moment, I continued to archive. I pulled up 3 years' worth of my software architecture models, my performance dashboards, my intricately designed grant strategy trees, all of it built from scratch. All of it undeniably mine. None of it ever acknowledged beyond generic, meaningless praise in impersonal all-hands meetings. I labeled each file clearly, tagged them meticulously by region and fiscal year, annotated them with crucial context. I created a master index, a comprehensive map of my contributions. So there would be no confusion, no question of where the credit truly belonged. This wasn't about leverage, not in the traditional sense. It was about clarity. I didn't need to convince anyone. I just needed the truth to exist somewhere undeniable. At home, in the secure confines of my personal workspace. I encrypted the entire archive and saved it to a robust, secure drive. I emailed one compressed copy to my attorney, just in case. A silent failsafe. The final version, meticulously printed and condensed into a physical form, went into an unmarked envelope. It was addressed to the Seattle Tech Beat Investigative Desk. Attention, Innovation, Oversight Division. No return address, no personal message. Just a single stark yellow post-it note stuck to the front, ***, public funds, private optics. I didn't touch a single file that wasn't legally mine. I didn't speak ill of anyone in the halls, no matter how much their incompetence frustrated me. But things began to subtly shift around me, a growing unease. A program officer, usually so organized, nervously asked where to find the cost breakdown for a pilot integration I designed months ago. I told her I'd sent it 6 months ago, twice. She frowned, realizing the version she'd used, the one Blake had probably tweaked, must have been compromised. People noticed I wasn't in the Slack channels anymore, my presence fading. Blake, ever oblivious, sent a chirpy all-staff memo reminding everyone to forward legacy data to central systems. Someone bravely replied with a question about source validation, and the entire thread went chillingly quiet. On my last Friday, I left my desk exactly as I'd found it, empty, clean, impersonal. No farewell lunch, no email blast, no public goodbyes. I signed the HR forms with a steady hand and dropped my badge into the designated tray by the exit. On the way out, I passed the break room, where the leadership team was gathered over catered pastries and strained, filtered smiles. I kept walking, had somewhere far more important to be. The cafe was nestled discreetly between a failing shoe repair shop and a florist that, true to its quirky nature, never seemed to open on time. It was the kind of place no one noticed unless they were actively looking for something quiet, something off the beaten path. That's precisely why I chose it. Imani Vance arrived right on time, a figure of calm professionalism. She wore a sensible gray wool coat, carried a slim notebook, and didn't introduce herself with the booming pronouncements of a news anchor. Just a calm nod, a firm, no-nonsense handshake, and eyes that didn't wander, eyes that seemed to absorb every detail. She ordered a black coffee, then opened her notebook, but didn't press record on any device. Not yet. She wanted to hear it directly. "Tell me what you want me to know," she said simply, her voice low and direct. I didn't rehearse. I didn't editorialize. I didn't need to add any emotional embellishments. I started with the raw numbers. Year-over-year grant shifts. Internal allocations that mysteriously didn't match our public-facing budgets. Donor statements that had quietly disappeared after events. I handed over copies, financial records pulled from open databases, meticulously printed emails with crucial attachments, key figures highlighted with my careful, precise notes. I didn't name every person involved. I didn't have to. The patterns of mismanagement and deception spoke eloquently for themselves. Imani didn't interrupt. She took occasional notes, her pen scratching softly on the paper, but mostly she simply listened. The way you only do when you've already seen the hazy outline of a distant fire, and are now patiently waiting for someone to hand you the match to ignite the full picture. "It's been building for a while," I said, my voice low, steady. Stopped tracking actual impact metrics 2 years ago. Now it's all optics. Press releases, glossy keynote panels, partnerships with absolutely no substance. And the money. The money is moving faster than the results ever could. She nodded. Slowly, a deep understanding in her gaze. "Why now?" she asked, her voice cutting through the quiet. "Because they gambled that I'd stay quiet? And because no one else gets to carry the blame when this house of cards finally collapses." It was a declaration, not a complaint. She didn't ask how. I felt she didn't offer sympathy. She asked for timelines, for specific audit trails, for the names of the programs most affected. I gave her what I had, just enough to verify, just enough to open a door wider for her own investigation. "I'm not looking for revenge," I said at the very end, placing my hands flat on the table, a gesture of finality. "I'm looking for accountability." Imani closed her notebook gently, a quiet click. "You've just given us enough to demand it." Outside the cafe, the sky had turned that soft, diffused gray that Seattle does so well. Quiet, still, full of weather that's never quite rain, yet promises change. I stepped out without saying goodbye. We both understood. The rest didn't need words. The next step would speak loud enough. 3 weeks after I walked out of InnovateForward for the very last time, the article landed. It ran on a Tuesday morning, precisely as I had anticipated, just under the fold of the Seattle Tech Beat's digital front page. The headline was quiet, almost understated, but profoundly deliberate. Asterisk, asterisk, the cost of applause. How one nonprofit traded impact for optics. Asterisk, asterisk, there were no names mentioned, no direct accusations against specific individuals. But the data points, the detailed descriptions of the programs, the glaring inconsistencies, they were too specific to ignore. Anyone who worked there would recognize them instantly. And anyone who funded them would undeniably have serious questions. By noon, the first shoe dropped, a major donor statement announcing a paused grant cycle pending internal review. The second followed by evening, citing concerns about strategic clarity. The third wasn't a statement at all, just a quietly almost imperceptibly removed logo from InnovateForward's online partnership page. The message was clear. Inside the building I no longer entered, the atmosphere shifted. People were moving differently. A former colleague forwarded me a screenshot. An emergency all staff. Meeting scheduled under the ominous subject line. Re-entering mission amid misinformation. The sheer irony wasn't lost on me. Blake, ever resilient in his self-deception, tried to lead a Zoom Q&A the next day. I didn't watch it live, but the frantic, almost breathless messages I received afterward painted a clear enough picture. He reportedly froze midway through a sentence, unable to explain how one program's outcomes had mysteriously vanished from the last quarterly brief. Someone, emboldened by the article, asked about the impact algorithms he'd mentioned in a recent podcast interview. Apparently, he simply changed the subject, stammering. Celeste, for her part, went completely radio silent. The woman who once posted weekly saccharine reflections on leadership growth hadn't published anything in 10 days. InnovateForward's LinkedIn page shut off comments altogether, a desperate attempt to control the narrative. By the end of the TAs. Week 1 staffer posted anonymously on an internal forum asking if any actual impact metrics had been reviewed since March. No one responded. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate with a triumphant fist pump. But there was a quiet, deep hum beneath. Everything, like something fundamental beginning to unravel. Not out of spite, not from sabotage, but from the pure, unyielding weight of a truth that had been ignored, buried, and denied for far too long. At home, I refreshed the article once more before finally closing the tab. It was out there now. That meant I could at last turn my full attention forward, towards something I was finally free to build. I called it QuellMetrics. Not because I wanted my name to be the brand. I wanted the work to speak for itself. The small LLC. A modest, functional website. Services overview written in plain, unambiguous language. No hero banners. No visionary mission statements filled with empty promises. It's just a clean portfolio and a quiet promise. Asterisk, asterisk systems that work, not systems that impress. Asterisk, asterisk. The first contract came in through a referral. An unexpected but welcome. Surprise! It was a district grant coordinator I'd trained years ago, now heading a literacy coalition in Yakima. She didn't ask for a pitch. She simply asked if I had time. I did. The second came from a struggling nonprofit in rural Nevada, serving reservation schools with no consistent funding cycle. Their director told me they'd seen my frameworks passed around in PDF form, stripped of any logos but utterly intact in their precise logic. We didn't know who wrote them, she said, her voice filled with genuine admiration. But we followed your numbers before we knew your name. The third was a delightful surprise. A startup foundation with a crystal clear mission, but a tragically ragged back end. They wanted help getting their reporting structure clean, robust, and transparent before accepting national attention. We don't want to become another InnovateForward, they said explicitly. I didn't ask how they knew. I already understood. I worked from the guest room in my house, now lovingly converted into a clean, quiet office with matte walls and a serene view of the back garden. I didn't hang any certificates on the walls. I didn't need to. There was something profoundly grounding about building without translation, without compromise. No labyrinthine leadership politics to navigate. No performative check-ins with executives, more concerned with appearances than results. It's just pure strategy, structure, and tangible results. I kept my hours steady, predictable. No more 11 p.m. reforecasts or desperate Sunday grant rewrites. And yet, somehow, I did more. Every model I designed solved a real problem. Every call I took led to something that actually moved the needle, that created genuine impact. I didn't have to shout to be heard. The people who truly needed to listen already were. I had no interest in scaling fast, no illusions of becoming. a thought leader, or the next big disruptor. I simply wanted to build what worked. And in the quiet, steady rhythm of honest, impactful work, I began to realize, with profound clarity, I hadn't lost anything at InnovateForward. I'd only been waiting to be truly free of its stifling confines. The headlines, now distant echoes of a crumbling empire, no longer surprised me. One by one, they trickled out. Short, factual, clinical. A former project partner filed suit for breach of grant terms. Two major funders issued statements formally distancing themselves from past oversight frameworks at InnovateForward. The InnovateForward board, under mounting pressure from revelations, accepted Celeste's resignation. The language was polite. The timing, however, was brutally precise. Blake's exit came a few days later, a mere footnote buried deep in a press release about realigning internal energy and external expectations. The phrase stress-related issues appeared halfway through the bland corporate jargon, a thinly veiled excuse. No one shared the announcement internally. It simply happened, and his name, once plastered everywhere, quietly disappeared from the staff directory by the end of the week. Then, late on a Thursday night, an email from Celeste arrived. The subject line was simply, apology. Her address wasn't the work one. It came from a personal account, the kind with a generic Gmail domain and no corporate signature banner. I almost deleted it unread, my finger hovering over the trash icon. But a flicker of curiosity, a desire for closure, got the better of me. It wasn't long. 5 paragraphs, measured, contrite, but not defensively so. She admitted to ignoring warning signs, to prioritizing presentational clarity over operational truth. She wrote that the foundation's collapse had begun long before. The article that my resignation had simply accelerated what they were too slow, too unwilling to confront. She ended with, "You were right to walk away. I was wrong to assume you wouldn't." I read it twice. Not because I needed the words, not because I craved her validation, but because I wanted to be absolutely sure I hadn't misread the tone. It wasn't groveling. It wasn't strategic. It felt genuinely like someone trying to let go of their own internal noise, their own burdens. I replied a few hours later. No flourishes. No coldness. No lingering anger. Thank you for the clarity. I wish you steadiness in your next chapter. That was it. No anger, no vindication. It's just a closed tab. And then, seamlessly, back to the metrics dashboard I'd been meticulously reviewing for a new client. The work didn't stop. It didn't even pause. Somewhere out there, an old structure was collapsing in silence, piece by agonizing piece. But in my small, productive corner of the world, something else was unfolding. Something steady. Something built to truly last. It came on a Monday morning, nestled between a reminder to update my quarterly client summaries and a shipping confirmation for printer paper. The sender's name wasn't immediately familiar, but the domain caught my eye. An education innovation. Fun I'd quietly followed for years. I opened the email with half my attention, expecting just another newsletter or an invite to a generic webinar. Instead, it was a full-fledged proposal. They'd reviewed a demo of the grant mapping dashboard I'd posted in a closed education forum 2 weeks earlier. The same tool. It's the very same data-driven marvel I'd built in pieces during stolen weekend hours at InnovateForward. It's the one that had been dismissed twice by leadership as too granular to scale. Their message was direct, refreshingly so. They saw potential, not just to fund it, but to help bring it to districts across the entire country. No branding tweaks. No promises of nebulous visibility in exchange for control. It's just a full grant, a robust platform, and an offer to join their advisory board. "We don't want to package your idea," the email said, a phrase that resonated deeply. Within me, we want to protect it while it grows. I stared at the screen for a long time, not out of hesitation, but because it felt like something I hadn't consciously realized I was waiting for. Permission, not just to contribute. but to lead. To truly shape something without apology, without compromise. I scheduled a call that afternoon. It lasted 40 minutes. They asked about expansion, about data integrity, about adaptability for underfunded districts. They didn't ask about my resume. They already knew my story. It was why they'd reached out. By the end of the week, I signed the agreement quietly, without fanfare, without ceremony, a contract. And a clear path forward, not toward prestige, but toward usefulness. Toward building systems that wouldn't buckle under the harsh glare of a spotlight. Afterward, I walked outside and stood in the garden for a few minutes, breathing in the fresh air. The rosemary, the first planted in spring, had started to bloom, its delicate purple flowers appearing steady and unnoticed until now. I didn't need to be seen to know it was growing. Still, it felt profoundly good to finally have the space, the freedom, to cultivate something in full daylight. The frame isn't fancy, just a plain black border, matte glass, no embossing. Inside it, a single line in small centered text. Asterisk, asterisk, too data-driven to inspire. Asterisk, asterisk, it came from my final annual evaluation. At InnovateForward, a throwaway phrase buried deep in a paragraph about growth potential. At the time, it stung sharper than the missed promotion, deeper than the silence that followed. Now it hangs proudly above my monitor, not as a scar, but as a milestone. I see it every morning when I open my laptop and begin mapping new strategy models or reviewing implementation data from pilot districts. I see it again during my mentorship calls, monthly sessions. I started with a handful of younger professionals who'd reached out after the article broke. People who build well but consistently get passed over. People who get told they're too detailed, too intense, too focused on process. We talk about infrastructure. We talk about boundaries. But mostly, we talk about value, the kind that doesn't trend on social media, but holds things together. The foundational strength that endures when everyone else is chasing ephemeral headlines. I always end the sessions with the same question, letting it hang in the air, allowing it to settle. Asterisk, asterisk, whose system are you building? And why not your own? Asterisk, asterisk, some of them nod right away, a spark of recognition in their eyes. Some just blink, letting the weight of the question settle deep within them. But all of them, every single one, understand what I truly mean. You can give your talent away forever to people who don't see it, who exploit it, who take credit for it. Or you can build with intention, with integrity, with quiet, unwavering purpose. Even if it's quiet at first. The dashboard I once made in the margins of other people's plans, dismissed as too granular, is now actively transforming operations in 7 districts across the country. The Innovation Fund calls it a cornerstone. I still just call it functional. What truly matters isn't how many people know I made it. What matters is that it works. Sometimes I still get those breadcrumbs of realization from people in that old world. Not apologies, not requests, just subtle acknowledgments. A forwarded policy I wrote. A tool someone remembered was missing. I don't reply. I don't need to. They were never my audience. I built this chapter for the ones who see what others miss. And the more I share, the more I realize my silence was never absence. It was focus. It was design. And now it's movement.